Long ago, when the pyramids were still young, the ancient Egyptians would worship their guardian deity, the almighty Horus, Exodia. This behemoth was bound into 5 separate pieces, and when the need arose, and when the land was under threat of darkness and siege, Exodia would rise from the sand and defeat all oppression. Anyone that would face Exodia would be simply and utterly obliterated. And then he was completely forgotten about for over 5,000 years, not written about in a single ancient Egyptian text, until he got turned into a children's playing card game. So today, we're going to be talking about the legendary, the almighty, the majestic Exodia. You like this thing? I like it. It's the official Little Hands card holder. That's the Little Hands card holder. Pick it up today at your local big box retailer. Did I get all of that promotional shit right? Okay, good. Alright, so, I don't think there's a single person that has ever been into Yu-Gi-Oh! That does not know who Exodia is. Exodia is right up there along with the Blue Eyes White Dragon and the God cards and the Dark Magician Girl as simply the most iconic and famous cards in the entire game. He makes an appearance in the very first episode, landing Yugi the ultimate victory against Seto Kaiba's 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons. Now, to be fair, he doesn't show up that many times in the rest of the story, but his presence is definitely known. At least in every arc, Exodia is shown, or some variation, or is at least mentioned. Alright, in Battle City, Yugi had to face off against the Rare Hunter that used Exodia against him, which was a total, actually kind of an idiot move, because he decided to put 3 copies of the damn cards in all of his deck, and that just basically weighed down his deck, and that's how Yugi beat him, so not a smart guy there. In the actual card game, all pieces of Exodia are in fact limited to 1, but like I said, even if you could have 3 copies of each in your deck, that would probably hinder you more than help you, but that's just me. In fact, the only way that Exodia is really viable in competitive decks is in decks that are completely catered to Exodia. You know how, like in the anime, when Yugi was using his grandpa's deck, and of course we have that epic line, hold on, I gotta do it, I have to do it. My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba, but it does contain the impossible Exodia. Damn it, I screwed it up! Crap! Anyway, I guess I'm just gonna have to live with that. And as a minor caveat to this whole thing, the other day I was talking to my grandfather on the phone. I was wishing him a happy birthday. He just recently turned 96. And while I had him on the horn, I asked him, I'm like, hey, Pappy, does your deck contain any pathetic cards? And he responded with, no, Matthew, my deck contains no pathetic cards. And in case you're curious, no, my grandfather doesn't run Exodia. He runs a Shadow deck for some reason, so okay, thanks, Pappy, but whatever. Yeah, you know how Exodia, though, in Yugi's, deck, because it was all mixed up with a bunch of other cards that his grandpa had, it really didn't have any theme involving drawing cards, which is what an Exodia deck needs to have. You need to have as many cards in your deck that are catered to getting Exodia in your hand as quickly as possible. Alright, that's what the entire decks are based around. So, unless you have the heart of cards on your side, you're pretty much screwed. You can't just take the Exodia cards and just throw them in any deck. I mean, you could. I mean, I run a 6 Samurai deck. I could take these 5 pieces and throw them in there, but the problem with Exodia is, unless you have all 5, they're basically just dead cards in your hand. And even to add it even further, the Exodia cards can't even be summoned. I mean, they can. You can play them, but if you do, you lose any possibility of having the instant win condition, unless you have some way to get them back to your hand, because Exodia's effect is unique, not only in that it's the first ever instant win effect in the entire game. In fact, I remember having the original rulebook to Yu-Gi-Oh!, like the rulebook that you would get in like the first starter decks, like the Yugi and Kaiba starter decks. It actually listed, ways you can win the game, and it stated, if your opponent loses all their life points, that's an obvious one, that's the way most people win their duels, or if there's a deck out scenario, if your opponent can't draw cards. But there was also a specific rule in the book just for Exodia. Now, nowadays, Exodia isn't the only card that has an instant win condition. Many of them, like Last Turn, are in fact forbidden. There's also that Creator God. That's a combination of all of the, Egyptian God cards together. If you somehow manage to get all the Egyptian gods on the field, and you can summon, I think his name is Horasith, the Creator God, and he's the only card in the entire game that has the Creator God typing, and if you manage to summon him, then that's an instant win. So, obviously, all instant win cards are going to be difficult. Managing to get all of the Egyptian God cards on the field just in general is going to be hard, and managing to get all Exodia cards in your hand at the same time is also going to be difficult unless you run a deck that's literally stacked with nothing but cards that let you draw other cards, or other effects like Sangan, for instance. And I guess I should apologize at this point because I screwed up Sangan's effect in the Yatagarasu video. I said that Sangan allows to special summon a monster to your side of the field that has 1500 or less attack. No, it does not in fact have a special summoning effect. It has an effect that allows you to take a card from your deck that has less than 1500 and add it to your hand. So Sangan would be a very useful card to have, and Witch of the Black Forest as well, in order to take any of the pieces of Exodia. So let's talk about the individual pieces. These things were awesome. So Exodia first appeared in the Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon starter pack, and each single limb of Exodia was an ultra rare in that pack, with the head being in fact a secret rare. And remember, this was back when packs, I don't know if they still do this because I haven't, bought like regular booster packs in Yu-Gi-Oh in a long time. Usually I only get like the legendary collections or the box sets or something really cool that comes out. I'll pick those up, but it's been years since I've just went out and bought a booster pack like in my youth. Well, rather, I forced my dad to buy them every time I went to the store. But yeah, the original Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon, man. 4 ultra rares, 1 secret rare. You only had 2 secret rares in the pack. So if you managed to get a complete set of the original Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon Exodia, all 5 pieces, you're probably sitting on quite a bit of money there. I bet you could probably sell them for quite a bit on eBay. So, or if you could just keep them as a collector's item, because those things would be pretty valuable. Fun fact about that is that I did in fact end up getting a secret rare from the LOB booster, but it was not in fact Exodia. It was the other. And I'm actually not even going to take it out because I really do love this card. It was Trihorn Dragon. That's a secret rare. I don't know if you could see it there. I guess I'll take it out just to show you. Just to prove to you that I really have it. And this is when I was a kid, and it's still in really good condition. This is the one card I got where I had to be very, very careful with what I was doing. I don't even know if you could see it, but there you go. That's just me boasting about my exploits. But that's probably one of the most valuable cards I own in terms of just like, pulling something secret rare out of a booster. That's just something that I was really hyped for. That and my, whenever I pulled my ultra rare Buster Blader, that was another one that I've like shot through the roof when I found out I got that. I could have just memories just sitting back and, opening that fresh pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and like I even knew how the cards smelled after a while, like, that's a good one. Let's see what we got. Crap. Holy crap, Buster Blader! I remember that. Alright. But yeah, so that was the LOB set. Ever since then, it was released, and I think Dark Beginnings 1 was the big one. That was like the reprinting of a lot of rare cards in Dark Beginnings 1, and I remember getting really excited for that. In that booster, I believe each of the limbs were rares, which made them considerably easier to get. Still, you had to get 5 rares, which you have to buy a lot of boosters for that. If you're a kid and you didn't have any money and you basically had to rely on your parents for this, you had very much no luck in getting your hands on Exodia whatsoever. I mean, I even remember going to a rare collectibles store a lot when I was a kid, and every now and then they would have one of the limbs of Exodia, but even they never had the whole set. Because if you ended up getting a whole set of Exodia when you were like as a kid in like 2004 playing this card game, you were essentially like, you were a freaking deity. You were the god. Because even if your deck was hideously unbalanced to hold Exodia in it, and you would never be able to actually fulfill the instant win condition, you were like a 10-year-old kid that had flipping Exodia. That would give you mad street cred on the school bus, you know what I mean? And while we're talking about the holy limbs of the Forbidden One, let me just ask you, which one is your favorite? I'm a right armor myself, but what's your opinion on that? Oh, and fun fact, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, Exodia has no crotch. Yeah, even though he's broken up into 5 pieces, they were really careful when drawing the artwork, which, even after you gather all of them together and actually put them in, like, where they're supposed to be, you get something that's a little bit less threatening, because, he has no crotch. Actually, it kind of makes me feel sad for the guy. Yeah, so Dark Beginnings had a re-release. I think the head of Exodia was an ultra rare in that one, and ever since then we've had like in recent years we had the Legendary collections, the Yugi's World box set. I think these ones came from LDK2, so this would be Legendary Collection Kaiba, I believe this is where it was. There's a Yugi one as well. There was Return of the Bling, where I think it was in as well. So it's not really that hard to get your hands on Exodia now, because you can really buy it in any in those specific box sets. The box sets cost like what, 40, 50 bucks, which is a lot. I mean, to spend on cards if you don't have a lot of money, you know. But in general, getting your hands on Exodia, all 5 pieces, is not hard. I have actually 2 complete sets. This is one complete set, and the other complete set is actually in the book here. It's right here, and then, you know, here's the 4 limbs, and then, oh, sorry, here's the 4 limbs, and then here's Exodia chilling out with Obelisk down there. So, yeah, it's not really hard to get your hands on it now, but back in the day, man, this guy was legendary, especially when even Dark Beginnings wasn't out yet, and all you had was the Legend of Blue Eyes. Like, if you managed to get all 5 pieces from that, oh, that reminds me of another story, man. Okay, so it was me and my friend Clifford, who was this other kid in town that played Yu-Gi-Oh! With me, and I remember it was his birthday once, and I got him like a collection of like 3 little booster packs, and one of them was LOB, and he opened one up, and I remember he got, I think it was the left leg of Exodia, and we opened it on the school bus to school, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so crazy, you got the left leg! And we started talking about, oh, we're gonna collect all the pieces of Exodia. It never really happened. I never collected them as a kid. This was the first time I ever got it. I don't think I even ever found any of the limbs when I was a kid, you know, just going through the boosters, because these things were, you know, they were ultra rares, they were hard. But anyway, let's go back into the anime a little bit, see how Exodia affected the anime. Of course, we already discussed the epic first episode where Yugi summons the legendary Exodia, and he plays it on the board, which isn't, like I said, is not what you actually do to summon him, but it looks cool, so that's fine. I've assembled all 5 special cards, all 5 pieces of the puzzle. Gotta make sure to change that pentagram into a octagram for kids, you know, whatever. And then Exodia comes out, and it's really freaking cool, and Kaiba's like, Exodia? That's impossible! No one's ever been able to summon him! And then Exodia is like, Obliterate! That's Dan Green at his finest, and then bam, bam, bam. Awesome. However, the celebration wasn't going to last long, though, because I believe it's only 3 episodes later, on the trip to Duelist Kingdom, while on the boat, this little squirmy weasel happened. Yeah, you think we forgot Weevil. How long has it been since I've seen the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, what, 2002? We thought we forgot. Better watch yourself, Underwood. Shit's going down. So yes, while on the trip to Duelist Kingdom, and not, to be fair, not all the blame is on Weevil here. You gotta kind of give some blame to Yugi as well. They're on the way to Duelist Kingdom, on a boat, right next to a balcony, and then Weevil Underwood saunters over to Yugi, and he's like, oh, Yugi, how you doing? You're such a great duelist. You're so amazing. By the way, you know those 5 incredibly rare cards that proceed with the only instant win condition in the entire game? And keep in mind, this is not real Yu-Gi-Oh! This is anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there is exactly 4 copies of the Blue Eyes White Dragon in existence. 4 copies, that's it! You know how many copies of Blue Eyes exist in the actual card game? You know how many variations alone? There's at least a dozen different kinds of artworks and variations of the Blue Eyes alone. He has an entire archetype based off of them. There's millions. 4 copies in the anime. And when it comes to Exodia, there's more, because the Rare Hunter used them, so that's a little bit weird. But still, these cards, redonkulously rare, okay? And Yugi was like, oh yeah, Exodia, he's awesome. And Weevil's like, can I see those rare cards? And Yugi's like, okay, sure, and just takes him out of his deck and gives him to freaking Weevil, and he's looking at him, and he has time. No one thinks to stop him. He has time. He's walking slowly over to the balcony. Like, if I gave someone my Tri-Horn Dragon, which I wouldn't, but if someone came up to me, he's like, Matt, can I see your Tri-Horn Dragon? And I don't know, I was huffing a lot of paint that day, and I decided, you know what, okay, fine, you can check out my Tri-Horn. And if he starts walking over to the balcony, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go put him in a headlock or something. He's like, you're not, okay. So Weevil walks over and just like, say goodbye to Exodia, and he just throws it out into the ocean. And right at that point is where Joey should have decked, because Yugi, he's like, what, 4 foot nothing. But at that point, Joey should have at least decked Weevil so goddamn hard. He should have gone over the edge as well. Joey himself jumps in to the ocean, the freezing ocean, on the side of a ship to pick up Yugi's cards. That is a true friend. That is a true bro right there, Yugi. Okay, you and Joe friendship, 100%. That's actually a card. But anyway, yeah, unfortunately, Joey was only able to save 2 pieces of Exodia, and we never hear from those pieces again, by the way. We never hear which pieces Exodia that Yugi managed to recover. It's never brought up again because they're useless, like I said. So, that was the reason, because in the anime, they can't have Exodia in Yugi's deck, because that would always give him an out. But here's my problem with that. Yugi already has an out. It's called the Heart of the Cards, dumbasses. That's always Yugi out. How many times in the series is Yugi freaking dueling, and he's like, come on, Heart of the Cards, and he draws a bullshit one-off card that was just invented for that scene, and he's like, I drew this bullshit card! I win! King of games, everybody loves the King of Games. That shit happens all the time in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, okay, so why couldn't you just kept it? Just have Weevil still be a conniving little and then just throw the freaking cards over, have Joey jump over, have Joey save them all, have Joey collect all of them back and give them back to Yugi. You could still keep him in the deck, because it's not like he can win. You can still write it in the show where he's not gonna win every single duel using Exodia. It just gives him an out in case things get really bad. And guess what? He already has one even without Exodia. You could even spin it a different way. You could have it like you know how Kaiba duels against Yugi the second time on Duelist Kingdom, okay? And then you could be like, oh, well, Yugi, you think you might be able to use Exodia to win again, but however, I have planned a way to defeat him. And maybe Kaiba put cards in his deck that allows him to destroy Exodia while it's in Yugi's deck or something, or, stacks a lot of card destructions or hand destructions or whatever that allows him to discard a hand. You could run around that. You could have ways to write around it without him being completely OP. Because it's not OP. I mean, Exodia isn't. He's not OP. Not really. Because just the sheer amount of luck that you have to have in drawing Exodia, even in a dedicated deck, you have to rely really on luck in order to get him out there. That's pretty much it. If you don't have that on your side, you're pretty much screwed. So that's why you don't really see Exodia in competitive play all that much. Now, there are variations of Exodia that were added over the years to kind of give a little bit more. He does kind of have his own archetype, a little bit. Is kind of stuff based around him. So the first one that we get to see is the next time we get to see Exodia in the anime, in fact, which was during the Virtual World arc with Gozaburo Kaiba, who uses Exodia Necros. And Exodia Necros, if we're just being straight up here, not trying to be hyperbolic at all, it's Exodia if he was a f***ing zombie. Now, Exodia Necros is a real card released in Dark Crisis, actually the poster boy for Dark Crisis. Also, by the way, Dark Crisis, one of my also favorite boosters, because I believe Dark Crisis, I think that introduced the Archfiends. Really big fan of them. So, when Gozaburo summoned Exodia Necros, that basically gave the archetype an ability to have some purpose even if parts of Exodia got destroyed, because before Dark Crisis, before Exodia Necros was introduced, if any of these cards ended up getting sent to the graveyard, you were pretty much screwed, because there were very few cards at that point in the game that allowed you to, not only just, like, yeah, you had Monster Reborn, that could special summon a card from the graveyard to the field, but like we said, Exodia can't be on the field, has to be in your hand. So there were very few cards that allowed you to bring a card from your graveyard back to your hand. I don't even know if there were any back then. There probably was, but not very many. So you'd have to either use Monster Reborn, like, let's say you're dueling, you have the right arm in your hand, your opponent plays something that destroys your hand, or like a jar card or something, you throw it back in your deck, or you throw it in your graveyard or something. If it's in your graveyard, you're screwed. You'd have to use Monster Reborn to bring back the right arm to your side of the field, then you'd have to play something else to return it to your hand, and that's, once again, really, really unfortunate that that's going to happen, right? So Necros introduced a way that even if the pieces of Exodia got sent to the graveyard and you could not use the instant win condition, at least they would be useful for something. So, what you gotta do is you gotta get your hands on Contract with Exodia. That was a voice crack. Play Contract with Exodia. This card can only work as long as all 5 pieces are in your graveyard. So, once again, I mean, that's a little bit easier to do than actually, you know, getting them all destroyed by your opponent. I mean, I guess you could conceivably do that. I mean, your opponent would probably figure out what's going on if you kept playing pieces of Exodia and they kept destroying them. It's like, this fucker's trying to summon a Necros, you know? But yeah, there's other cards like Hand Destruction. Like, oh, I have 3 pieces of Exodia in my hand. There's already 1 piece in my graveyard. I'll play, you know, Card Destruction and send them all to my graveyard. So there's ways you could do that. But after Contract Exodia is activated, all 5 pieces are in your graveyard. Then you could special summon Exodia Necros. Now, in the anime, the effect of Necros worked like this. Each individual piece of Exodia in your graveyard represented an effect that Necros had. So, I believe it's both of the legs made him immune from spell and trap cards. I think the left arm resisted card effects, and the right arm had this increase of attack. Like every time Necros attacked, 1,000 attack were added to his overall points. And then the head made him resistant from battle. He couldn't be destroyed in battle. And the way that Kaiba got around this in the anime against Gozaburo is he figured out a way to remove cards from the graveyard, like Soul Demolition and eventually Soul Release. And so if you remove the left leg from the graveyard, then Necros in the anime was now vulnerable to traps or spells, whichever the left leg governed, okay? So that was how it worked in the anime. Now, in the card game itself, it was a little different, but not really much. It still had all the basic effects. It just wasn't limited to, like, you know, the left leg is tied to this, the right arm is tied to this. Basically, Necros works like this. He's immune to spells, he's immune to traps, he's immune to card effects, cannot be destroyed in battle, and every time he attacks, he gains 500 attack. Pretty OP card. Now, there is no instant win condition with Necros, and like with the actual Exodia, so don't worry about that. However, the major downside is you have to have all 5 in your graveyard, or what it's been called lately, the GY, or more popularly known as the extra, or as the second deck, because so many. Okay, that's something that really kind of... Can we have a little rant about just modern Yu-Gi-Oh? And like I said, I'm not competitive, but I hate that the graveyard has become this basic second deck that, you know, so many archetypes are based around, like, because it used to be back, you know, like, the graveyard was the flipping graveyard. Like, you sent a card to the graveyard, it was pretty damn hard to get something back. I mean, yeah, there were cards that allowed you to bring stuff back, but now it's like, I sent your card to the graveyard, won't be seeing from that anymore. Do you know how many times that your opponent could just laugh in your face now with that? Just, my deck runs around graveyards. I'm like, screw you. The only card that, the only archetype that's allowed to do that is freaking Gravekeepers, and they did it right. Run freaking Necro Valley for life. Anyway, that was my little rant. You could disagree with that if you want. I just hate that the graveyard is not even a graveyard. Now it's just kind of like, you know, a limbo more than anything. Just rename it Limbo. Okay, anyway. So yeah, in the actual card game, though, there is no instant win condition, but you have to have all 5 pieces in the graveyard. If even one of them is either brought back to the field or banished, then Exodia Necros is destroyed automatically. Now, there are some other variations of Exodia, some that do actually have the instant win condition, like Exodius, the ultimate forbidden lore. Now, the way Exodius works is in order to summon him, you have to shuffle all the cards in your graveyard into your deck, alright? And then, every time Exodius attacks, I believe you can discard 1 card from your deck or your hand into the graveyard. And for every normal monster that's in your graveyard, he gains 1,000 attack. And essentially, the end game of this is that if you end up getting all 5 pieces of the Forbidden One in the graveyard, then you win the duel. Now, this is a little bit of a problem because Exodius basically has to attack 5 times, and there's any number of things that can go wrong there. I believe he's immune to card effects, but that doesn't mean he can't be destroyed. And if he is destroyed, I believe he's banished. So it's a little bit more of a risk with Exodius, but hey, at least it's an option, okay? Then, of course, we have Exode, who's a Master of the Guard, a defensive-based Exodia that was found in the Rock starter deck. 0 attack, sure, but he's got 4,000 D, and let me tell ya, that's a big D. Finally, we have Legendary Exodia Incarnate. Once again, this card does not have an instant win condition, more or less just giving you options for the Exodia archetype when the cards are already on the field. I believe how this thing works is you have to discard, certain Forbidden One cards into the graveyard, then he gains 1,000 attack for every one, and then at the end phase, you have to take a Forbidden One card from your graveyard back to your hand, and it's also immune to card effects, but if it is destroyed, you can show how many Forbidden One cards you happen to have in your hand, and then you could draw one card for each. So not an instant win, but once again, I guess it's an Exodia that's good at drawing for other Exodia pieces, maybe to try to complete the set, so that's that, but okay, fine. The last time Exodia is actually shown in the anime is during the Millennium World arc, when Shimon, who is the, ancestor of Solomon Moto, uses the Millennium Key to summon the actual deity, Exodia, and it's this epic scene where Zork is about to attack, and nobody can do anything. He's like Aku from Samurai Jack. They're throwing spears at him, and they're launching their catapults. Nothing is working on this guy, and then Shimon steps out and he's like, "Please grant this old man one last battle in the name of the Pharaoh," and epic music cues up. By the way, okay, I've been rewatching a lot of the episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the sub, okay, in the original Japanese, and a lot of times they do cooler stuff. A lot of times they remove a lot of the lame ass jokes that exist in the 4Kids one. In fact, all the time they do that. But I'll tell you what, man, not all of the music tracks suck. It's more or less just, like, the lack of music. I mean, there is music in the original Japanese, like Yugi's theme and, like, the Fang of Critias, like that famous scene when Yugi's drawing cards against Weevil, and he's like, "Draw! Monster Kado!" That soundtrack, I think, Fang of Critias, that's an awesome soundtrack. They're really good soundtracks. But a lot of times in the series when there's, like, action, I think 4Kids did better, and they did no better than that Exodia theme, which is absolutely badass. And so Shimon raises up the Millennium Key, and he's like, "By the power of this Millennium item, I unlock the seal!" And then the 5 stone tablets of Exodia rise out of the desert, and then Exodia comes out, and he's all bound up in chains, and he's like, "Exodia smash!" And he grapples with Zork, and bam! He's like, it's just this giant kaiju fight in ancient Egypt. And everyone's losing their shit. Like, oh my god, is he actually gonna win this? And he doesn't, because of Shimon that's how Exodia gets all of his energy from this one mortal, whereas Zork had, like, all the powers of the Dark World or some bullshit. So that's how Zork was able to win. But still, that was pretty cool to see Exodia one final time in the anime, and in actual form, where he just grapples with this Dark Lord, Zork. So that was pretty damn sweet. I should do an episode on Zork. Zork the card is significantly less cool than the actual version in the anime that Bakura has. But anyway, alright, so yeah, that's Exodia. I mean, what more can I say? The dude is iconic, and I'm just happy that I have all 5 pieces, even if I know that this, I'm never going to probably be able to summon Exodia in my life unless I actually go out of my way to make a dedicated deck. I remember back when I used to duel on Dueling Network, and now I use YGO Pro, and I know Duel Links is better, so maybe I'll get into that. But, I remember dueling on that, and every now and then people would run an Exodia deck, and they mostly consist... I mean, there's a few different versions of that you can use. As long as you have cards that let you draw other cards on Moss, you're pretty much set. But I believe it was cards like, you would spam, like, Battle Fader and Swift Scarecrow to protect yourself, and then you would have, like, Card and Card Trooper and all that crap, and you would manage it in Jars of Greed. You just do as many as you can get just in order to get the Exodia in your hand. I think Allure of Darkness was a good one, Sangan, Witch of the Black Forest. So yeah, that's how you're going to run Exodia now. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. I know this was a very well-requested video, so yeah, moving on to the rest of this series. We'll see where we're going from here. Alright, have a great night, everybody. Exodia Obliterate! Oh, and the original, by the way, and this was even dubbed once. There was like a pilot episode of the anime, the first episode, and it wasn't Exodia Obliterate, it was Exodo Hell Flame! I still like Exodia Obliterate. Except that one time he failed to obliterate. That was shit. But other than that, Exodia Obliterate!